The Lukang in its origin is connected with the fifth Dalai Lama. The fifth Dalai Lama was kind of the first spiritual and temporal leader who established the Tibetan state in the 17th century. He moved the capital from Shigatse to Lhasa, and for that he built the new palace, the Potala. Before there was already some structures from the first empire in the 7th or so century. And for building this huge palace, they were digging out the earth behind the Potala, and they used this earth as mortar for building the Potala. So by that they created quite a big pond, and in one dream the fifth Dalai Lama had, a local spirit appeared to him and said, listen, you are disturbing us. You know, we are living here, they are connected, these spirits called in Tibetan Lu or in Sanskrit Naga, they are connected to the water, but they're also connected to fertility and for the timely rainfall. And Lhasa is a very arid area, so they are depending completely on the rain to get their harvests. So the fifth Dalai Lama apologized and says, you know, we make up for that. We're gonna build a little shrine or temple for you, and there we make offerings to you. So that is kind of the legend, how the Lukang was kind of firstly planned. And this is the Lukang, the main temple of Lhasa. Very interesting is kind of the way they treated the perspectives. And here, this is the Lukang. It's called Chögyal Lukang, which means the temple of the Naga spirits behind the fortress. And the Potala was also a fortress. After the fifth Dalai Lama died, his regent, Desi Sanji Gyatso, who could hide for 12 years that the fifth Dalai Lama died, in that time looking for his incarnation, which he found in today's Bhutan, which became then the sixth Dalai Lama. And this Desi Sanji Gyatso seemed to be involved in the creating of the Lukang. Lu for the Nagas, Kang means house or temple, so it's actually the temple for these water spirits. There's good reasons to believe that the design we see today is going back to the time of Desi Sanji Gyatso and the sixth Dalai Lama, but maybe the structure we see of that building is from 1781. Even in Lhasa, when I looked in the Tibetan local guides, they gave these two different dates. One said this, the other said that. So we need to find some documents about the founding of this building to be sure. The reason we think that it is connected to the sixth Dalai Lama is that the main murals of the Lukang are these fantastic paintings of the Dzogchen teachings, the teachings of the Great Perfection, which we have in the top floor, which was kind of the sleeping room, the main room of the Dalai Lama. And this is the teachings of Pema Lingpa, which is kind of the most important master of Bhutan. That could explain why these particular teachings were chosen as an illustration of these murals. So the first book ever publishing images of these murals and of the Lukang was Crystal and the Way of Light by Chögyal Namkhai Norbu. And when the book came out, I think it was something like 86 or so, I got a copy of it and I said, oh, that's really interesting. At that time I was studying Tibetology, and then at a certain point I said, okay, I want to do research on that topic. When I came to Lhasa in 1996, then came the question, what are these texts based on, the inscriptions? What are the literary sources for it? There were already some people writing about these murals, but nobody did an in-depth study. And but generally the idea was it's connected to the 5th Dalai Lama. But when I was looking through his collected works and at his Dzogchen teachings, it didn't fit. So then I was trying to find a way to kind of, how you say, find the right source and not look in all various directions. So at a certain point I understood, I have this book on this catalog book on the Nyingma teachings, which are in the library of the Potala. So if this building is behind the Potala, so there should be at least the texts also in the library of the Potala. And in the Lukang, on the southeast wall, we have kind of this historical scenes. There are various masters of Tibetan history like Milarepa, Tangtong Gyalpo, Longchenpa, Padmasambhava, but one of them is also Pema Lingpa. And then I was looking through the texts of the depicted Nyingma Lamas in this catalog book from the Potala. And there I could find actually a text which was mentioned in the inscriptions. So by that, at least, I could find, this part is from Pema Lingpa. And then I could, with the time, with studying these various murals in the various walls, I could kind of identify 7 or 8 texts which were connected or which were from Pema Lingpa. His terma, so these texts were, sometimes it says Dzogchen Tantra, revealed, coming from Padmasambhava, revealed by the 13th Pema Lingpa. And some of the murals have inscriptions. You have kind of, the chapter is mentioned, the name of the chapter, so by that you can really, without question, identify things. Other murals have no inscriptions. I could find 2 texts which, for sure now, this is an illustration of that particular text. The Lukang is 3-story structure. The murals in the middle floor and the top floor are still visible. The ground floor, there's one room which has kind of Kalachakra and Shambhala kings. In the middle floor we have kind of what's called Ajelamo, Tibetan opera. So it's nice, kind of real, many scenes. It's 2 beautiful stories. Yeah, so far nobody really published on that, but it would be also very nice. And on the top floor then we have, it's dedicated to the Dzogchen teachings. And this is also where the private sleeping room of the Dalai Lama was, of the various Dalai Lamas. They could use it. I mean, often it's said the 6th Dalai Lama used this Lukang as a hideaway to meet his girlfriends. I don't know, it can be just fantasy. But at least it was his private room, and also the other Dalai Lama used it, and it was also a retreat room close by to the Potala. And here we have kind of 3 main walls, and here in the exhibition we have 2 of the walls represented. But the special thing about the Lukang is that you have these illustration of the complete path of Dzogchen. You have illustrations which show the practices, the meditative practices you do, which with their positions, and also the visions developing by that practice. And these visions are not something what is kind of visualized, but these are visions which manifest spontaneously. So having this imagery is very precious, because also it's kind of a phenomena that if people do certain practices, basically of deep relaxation, being completely present, then vision appears, and different people have more or less similar visions. So that's something very interesting. I mean, research for this kind of practice just starts. So the western wall shows, kind of illustrates 4 texts of Pema Lingpa, and this is dedicated to the practice of Dzogchen. So from the very beginning, when somebody meets the teacher, requesting for teaching, then receiving various preliminary practices. So these exercises are depicted there, and then finally, after the student, he or she prepared well, then there is another meeting with the teacher. This image we have there, it's kind of the teacher with a damaru, drum and a bell, and he introduces the student to the nature of mind, which means the teacher tells the students how to perceive or how to recognize, discover her or his natural state, which is kind of the base of the Dzogchen teaching. And then after it was recognized, then we have other exercises. Some is called the practice of Chögyal, which means complete relaxation. It's connected to the open or empty aspect of our mind. And once that is kind of stabilized, the second phase of practice in this Dzogchen Upadesha is called Chögyal. Basically it means you go beyond all your conditioning. We have there various depictions. You can have kind of vision of smoke, or sometimes it's like a chessboard, or it looks like kind of a line. Here it looks like a little like a spaghetti in this image, or a chain of these light spheres, which are called in Tibetan tikle, Sanskrit bindu, and these will develop. Then in the process of development, they go kind of in the teachings, they explain it by 4 steps, the 4 visions. Then when they fully develop, you see mandalas. Not something you have studied or learned, but they look like mandalas we know from tankas. You know, you have kind of a big circle. We see that in one of the images, central circle and 4 circles in the 4 directions in 5 colors. So that's something which happens natural there. And then in that process, these visions kind of become again less and less, and more you are just in the presence, you are just in the state of awakening. Because enlightenment means that you are awake, no more distraction, no more delusion. Here in this exhibition, the pictures are from Chögyal Namkhai Norbu, the pictures he took when he visited Lhasa in 1981. And at that time, parts of the wall were still existing, which nowadays are destroyed. They did a renovation, water was leaking in, the color kind of crumbled off, so parts are missing. But the pictures of Rinpoche, we know what was in the place, which now is gone. Not all of the murals which are visible right now, they are not really properly documented. That is something which really needs to be done. The other thing is the building is not well protected. The Potala is under UNESCO, but unfortunately the Lukang, which is just, you know, it's part actually of the whole thing, but it belonged to the Ministry of Forestry and it didn't become part of the UNESCO. So by that it's not really well protected. The other thing is these pictures, they show in a unique way human potential, and it kind of show in a very accessible way what as humans, what possibilities we have. I mean, the final goal of these teachings is go beyond suffering, but even go beyond death.